We're live on the Ticats Audio Network as we get you prepped for this season's first meeting between the Tiger-Cats and Roughriders. Bubba O'Neill along with Andy Fantuz, and well, we're getting ready for the coach to certainly come in and speak to us and on the Tiger-Cats Pregame presented by Greenworks. And folks, whether you're on offense or defense, Greenworks Tools has got you and your lawn covered. Tackle any chore like the pros with our full lineup of tools at greenworkstools.com. Just checking out the players right now, Andy, and it seems like the players are wearing, I guess their early first warm-up, wearing those steel gray made in the Hammer uniforms, which is interesting to see that. I didn't know they wore those on the road.
Yeah, I've never seen those home jerseys worn on the road, but it looks good with the white pants and the green tops of the Riders, the old school logo they have on. So kind of a different look if you are watching on TV or there at the stadium.
Coach Sal, certainly thanks for joining us. And before we sort of dig into tonight's game, the word great, it's been kind of synonymous with the recently passed George Reed. Would you see that as an accurate description?
Yeah, Bubba, I really would. And in fact, I would add to it, he's a legend. George Reed, who passed away a day before his 84th birthday, certainly the team and the province are going to honor him tonight in that game. And, you know, we should all be thankful, Bubba, that George Reed came to Canada to play football. And they chose to stay and make his home here after his playing days. You know, a lot of people will miss George, and certainly the CFL is better off for him having been here.
Yeah, most certainly. Number 2 all-time in rushing, number 1 in career touchdowns. Got to speak with him a number of times. Very well said, Coach. Looking at tonight's matchup, obviously let's start with Bo Levi Mitchell back as the starting QB. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, after the last game, I was asked a question if we would start Schultz, and I said yes. He's earned that right to start the game. What I didn't know was that Bo had cleared the medical staff and was ready to play. So, you know, tonight the coaches are going to give Bo these 3 games to get ready for the playoffs. You know, it'll be interesting to me to see if the gunslinger Bo goes deep to short with his reads or vice versa. You know, if I'm Saskatchewan's defensive coordinator, however, I'd like to, this is the way I would play it. I'd show a 7-man front, and I'd zone blitz him. I'd rush 4 or 5 and drop 2 to take away his hot read and force him to hold the ball and go elsewhere and see if Bo has rust or if he's ready to go. And that brings us to the O-line, which is going to have to be very good when Bo's in the game to protect him.
Well, Coach, if you're looking at the Ticat offense, we don't have Scott Milanovich, the normal play caller, at the game tonight for a personal reason, and that's throws a whole new dynamic in it. But what would you do if you were the signal caller with Bo coming back after injury in Saskatchewan on the road tonight?
Well, number 1, get the ball out of his hands real quick. Number 2, use the running game. Use the screen passes to both the back and slot backs, and maybe even the bubble screen outside wide. Get the ball moving for him. Don't allow him to have to stand in that pocket and withstand the pressure up front. You know, they've got some good front guys. Micah Johnson, for example, you know, here's a guy that can bench press the house. He's the kind of a guy that can push the pocket. So to me, they've got to get Bo into a rhythm, and that rhythm has to be get the ball out quick.
Looking back at the performance last week by the Tiger-Cats, you could certainly say that the defense and the special teams played some of their best football we've seen all season, especially with the secondary looking a little different than it has for most of the year. What stood out for you the most from last game?
Well, I thought the cohesion in the secondary was excellent in the last game. And, you know, you can expect the same thing tonight in Saskatchewan. But here's the way I look at it. This is going to be a very physical game. And you can't allow Saskatchewan to get a fast start. So, to me, Hamilton may want to play a little more zone and just pressure with the front four and let those linebackers drop into zone cover. You know, you need to stop the explosive plays from Saskatchewan, and to do that, the secondary is going to have to keep everything in front of them.
If we're looking at the defensive line, we got Dylan Wynn back in the lineup. The recent acquisition, Jamal Davis, is in there as well. He had a sack last week. What do you like about this D-line, and where do they need to go still before we do get to the playoffs?
Well, they really need to get into the mode of sacking that quarterback. We've been able to put some pressure on them in the last couple of games, but I really think without linebacker help, the front four has to become dominant. And Kearney and Davis, Jagarrett Davis, Sales and Diallo, they have that ability. So to me, you've got to get those guys upfield and in the face of the quarterback, and especially with Saskatchewan's quarterback, Domangala. You know, he's number one in pass attempts in the CFL, or the team is, with 524 passes. They've got 23 30-plus completions, yet their average gain per pass is only 8 yards. So to me, you know, if Hamilton can play some zone coverage and help eliminate the big plays and make Sask go nickel and dime down the field, I think it would go a long way to helping them. Remember this, in last week's game, in the loss to BC, Saskatchewan's Domangala threw for 409 yards, but he did not throw a TD pass. So, to me, you know, if you can make them go 10, 12 plays, they're going to make a mistake, and you can take the ball over.
Coach, if you're preparing for a home game, you kind of know what you're going to expect with your environment. If you're on the road, it's a lot different, and I don't think every stadium is the same. What would be a difference of playing somewhere like Regina versus some of the other road games that might not have quite as hostile and loud of an environment?
Well, you mentioned it, the hostile crowd. This crowd in Saskatchewan comes from all over the province. You know that as a player coming from there. They come far and wide. They'll go 400 miles just to watch the game. So that's a very vocal group of people and a very enlightened group of people. They understand exactly what they're doing when they do it as far as crowd noise. So, you know, it's very difficult for a team coming in, especially with a new quarterback behind center, to be able to get the signals called. And so I would expect they have to have a lot of hand signals, and they have to do a lot of silent count, where the guard, you'll see the guard look back at the quarterback and then tap the center when he's ready for the snap. So it's an environment that Hamilton has not been in this year thus far.
And just to follow up to that, you mentioned the how you're going to snap the ball and communicate on offense. Is there any other ways you would prep differently or game plan differently if you're in this type of environment?
Well, you know, the entire game plan has to depend upon the movement of the ball, where you are on the field. So if you're backed up in your own end, you know, you're going to expect that you might have to give up 2 points at some juncture. At the same time, if you're able to keep the ball moving on the field and get the crowd quieted down, which I think is always a case when you're traveling on the road, if you can get the crowd out of it, it will really help you.
You know, just to dovetail on what you guys were talking about being on the road, Bo Levi Mitchell, his career record on the road is 44-15. That's a 746 road record percentage-wise. That's the best of all time in the Canadian Football League among all qualified quarterbacks. And in addition, 11-4 versus the Riders, only throwing 18 interceptions in 15 games. So if a guy knows how to operate on the road, it certainly is Bo Levi Mitchell.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, one of the things we haven't talked about, guys, is both of these teams have game-winning players on their kick returns. Mario Alford is number 1 in combined kick yards, and number 2 is Hamilton's McAllister. So the fact that special teams haven't been mentioned, I think special teams could be a real factor and maybe a deciding factor in this game.
Yeah, that field position matchup will be important, and you mentioned depends on where you are on the field. I couldn't agree more that when the away team is backed up in their own area of the field and has to go 100 yards or a long way, the crowd just seems that extra oomph. And if you can get a spark from your special teams, it deflates that crowd noise and gets the offense. If you can start on the opponent's side of the field, certainly a much better chance to score points and ultimately win the game.
You're right, Andy. And, the turnover ratio is another thing. Saskatchewan's minus 13 in the turnover ratio, and Hamilton's minus 2.
Coach Sal, as I always say, the pleasure is ours when you join us. Thank you so much for bringing us your pregame salutations.
All right. Thanks, Bubba. Talk to you again.